Well, here to start a new chapter in SWF information disclosure is Melissa from National Junior College.
The China Investment Corporation. The Europeans, they call it locus, while the Americans call it voucher. This is the issue we see in the world today. Investments by sovereign wealth funds raises national security concerns because the purpose of the investment might be to secure control of strategically important industries for political rather than financial gain. Fears are exacerbated by the lack of transparency and accountability in these sovereign wealth funds. So, ladies and gentlemen, let us recognize the issue today. It is the lack of transparency, and I will now deal the opposition's first point on the whole idea of pressure, and I'll move on to show you that transparency is necessary. Now, ladies and gentlemen, they say that pressure is given to the government is to make populist decisions, that the people, they need this information. However, we say that this pressure is, sovereign wealth funds, they have the expertise to make these decisions on the investments, and thus we see that this pressure is not necessarily bad. Now, they came to us making a contradiction. They first said that there are ups and downs in sovereign wealth funds. The nature of investments are there are ups and downs which will create anxiety in society. Then they later put forth that there will be minimal change observed, and therefore regular disclosure is really not necessary. However, ladies and gentlemen, we put forth to you that it is absolutely necessary because we see that the nature of that we see the government is actually accountable to the people, and sovereign wealth funds, being state-owned, are thus accountable to the people. Now, today, as the International Monetary and Financial Committee, we aim to agree on a common set of voluntary principles to help allay some of the prevailing concerns about sovereign wealth funds and to reduce protectionist pressures to allow the international financial system to remain open. Today, we believe this can be achieved through the disclosing of financial states by sovereign wealth funds. Now, before I go into my case proper, allow me to answer one of the questions that the opposition has been mentioning. How much information should we disclose? Should we disclose all the information we have, like where we are placing investments, how much profits we make, and also our strategies for the long term? Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is not what we are asking sovereign wealth funds to do. We recognize that sovereign wealth funds, they have to protect these strategies, they have to protect their top secrets, and of course, we do not expect them to reveal them. We are saying that they should reveal their profits, their losses. They are going to be accountable to the people, and they are going to reveal this for the international community, which I will now show you why in my case proper. Now, today, fear and distrust arises as foreign governments are uncertain if sovereign wealth funds are created for political objectives or for optimizing returns on the government reserves. Thus, taking into account national security, they become wary of sovereign wealth funds and the investments that they make. For example, when a sovereign wealth fund owned by the government of Dubai sought to take over a company which owned ports in New York and in New Jersey, the US Congress became involved because of fears of Arab ownership of strategic infrastructures, and they prevented the deal. Thus, we see, ladies and gentlemen, that this lack of transparency... Yes, sir.
What difference does it make to this problem that you're raising when you disclose all the financial statements of sovereign wealth funds? Don't you think you're only making people more worried?
No, we do not make people more worried. In fact, with more information that is revealed with the financial states, countries can have a better understanding of these sovereign wealth funds, and thus they will not feel more worried because they know these sovereign wealth funds more. They know the financial states and performances. Now, moving back on, we see that in our policy, when sovereign wealth funds disclose their financial states regularly, a message is sent to the international community that these sovereign wealth funds are willing to be open to critique and do not hinder dual motives. This allows foreign governments to actually better understand the intentions of sovereign wealth funds. This not only diffuses political tensions, but also makes foreign governments more certain and more willing to allow sovereign wealth funds to buy their assets. Also, when both countries benefit from this deal, diplomatic ties between the countries will grow stronger. Furthermore, we believe that sovereign wealth funds should regularly disclose their financial state because transparency allows them to prove their reliability. Enhancing public trust in them would allow sovereign wealth funds to actually distinguish themselves from other sovereign wealth funds which remain secretive. And thus, sovereign wealth funds which disclose benefit as confidence and trust of the international community in them is increased, opening more doors for them to place investments and to gain profits. Hence, ladies and gentlemen, our committee strongly believes that sovereign wealth funds should follow Norway's example and disclose their financial state and performance to prove that they are reliable and facilitate greater flow of capital to benefit both home and host countries. Thank you.
Should we learn all we can about sovereign wealth funds disclosure, even if it's just a little bit? And let's find out from the opposition side who's going to be represented by Jia Wei.
Alright, I want to expand the range of this debate. We're not just talking about hard economics here. We want to talk about foreign policy. Because in the capacity of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, we think that sovereign wealth funds are corporate structures that serve in the public interest on an international and very often diplomatic level. And that's the reason why I'm going to contend with their case on two levels. First of all, about investor confidence. Second of all, let's talk about international apprehension, their constructive case on closing gov. Investor confidence, ladies and gentlemen. The logic of government side stance is sovereign wealth funds are important, they are important, they are important, therefore we must suddenly disclose. Really? We don't think so. Because first of all, they haven't drawn at all the causal link between importance of a sovereign wealth fund and the necessity to blab all their secrets, all their investment portfolios to every single member of the public. Prove that link, ladies and gentlemen. Second of all, we think confidence already goes up if they make a public investment in a major bank like Citibank. That is where investment confidence comes from, and that is already happening in the status quo. Why do we need to make an extraneous change in this circumstance? Further, as we pointed out in POIs, privacy is the key towards making sovereign wealth funds more keen to invest, because as I'll prove later in my substantive points, my extension, we only make sovereign wealth funds more wary of further investments because of the nature of the diplomatic ventures they are making through their investments. No, thank you, sir. So that's my first point of contention. My second one is about international apprehension. And their logic goes like this. We make people afraid of sovereign wealth funds, therefore we must suddenly disclose. Again, a missing link in the causational flow of their points. The question is, how in the world does revealing more and more information make people less afraid? The real thing is, if the information only corroborates with the people's fears and with the people's worries, then isn't that only intensifying the further fear that you're instilling about a sovereign wealth fund? Furthermore, I'm going to prove right now in my extension that their side of the house destroys the sovereign wealth fund's ability to act in national interest and preserve its own diplomatic currency. That's my point of extension. The first premise is that sovereign wealth funds, again, are corporate structures that act in the public interest on an international and very, very diplomatic level. However, the strategies of diplomacy occupy a vastly divergent logical region from the calculus of public and international adversaries. Therefore, if rigid transparency becomes the philosophy of the side of the proposition's claims, then a sovereign wealth fund is left at the whims of public and international opinion that, with positive intention or otherwise, prevents the sovereign wealth fund from acting as a functional diplomatic shield and weapon for Singapore and for other countries as well. Allow me to illustrate this principle right now with a few schematic layers of analysis with case studies. First of all, about Singapore and the country's immediate domestic concerns. And a prime case in point here is GIC's decision to buy South African gold in 1969. The GIC did not want to continue pegging the Singapore dollar to the fluctuating British pound. But at the same time, they did not want the alternative, that was the United States dollar, since we foresaw them within the next few years unpegging from the gold standard and creating even more volatility in the international market. Therefore, GIC bought large quantities of South African gold to insulate themselves against the tides of an unpredictable foreign exchange. Now, this was an incredibly savvy economic move on the part of GIC. But the point is, if the United Kingdom found out, what would happen? Our past colonial masters would decry our faithlessness and pull investments from a growing Singaporean economy. If the US found out, they're going to cry foul at our purchase of gold stained with apartheid money. And this is the nightmare of a straightforward, reasonable public and international response that we can expect. Why in the world are they proposing complete and utter transparency in such a situation?
Point, sir.
Yes, sir.
That is not going to make a difference to private investment, sir. You see, businesses operate to make money, not on public interest,
No,
sir.
sir, a sovereign wealth fund is not just a private company. A sovereign wealth fund acts as an instrument of the government, as you defined rightly. It is part to act in the public interest, and therefore their moves occupy a certain region that acts diplomatically as well. I'm illustrating this principle right now. No, thank you, sir. My second schematic layer of analysis is about diplomatic favors. And in economic terms, the Suzhou Industrial Park was an abject failure. If full statistical knowledge had been revealed about this loss-making venture, we would have stopped the move. But in the diplomatic dictionary, this move was able to pull Singapore relations with China a step up, and in the long term, through the lens of diplomatic currency, this does produce optimal diplomatic results. Therefore, sovereign wealth funds are best left untransparent in order to serve in the diplomatic interest of the country and of the public. In summary, they're applying an untenable ground of either offending international partners through transparency or surrendering our country's economic sovereignty. Sovereign wealth funds seek to protect national security and diplomatic interests, and I say we keep their ability to do just that.